webinars put forward by the Anaphylaxis campaign. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this latest webinar, which is called the Food Allergy Journey. And our presenter today is Tanya Wright. Tanya is a great friend of the Anaphylaxis campaign and has supported us very actively over many years. She is an active member of our clinical and scientific panel, and she also has quite an impressive biography. So I'm just going to pick a few points out. Tanya is a dietitian and she specialises in the diagnosis and management of food allergy, but she also looks at other food hypersensitivity areas as well. She has a special interest in food-related anaphylaxis, in food-related eczema, and the use of diagnostic tests in the management of gastro-allergy symptoms. Tanya works at St Mary's Hospital, Imperial College Healthcare Trust, and also at Hillington's NHS Hospital Foundation Trust, where she has established the dietetic allergy service, both for adults and for children. As I mentioned, she's an active member of our clinical and scientific panel, and she's also a committee member of the Food Allergy Group of the British Dietetic Association. Tanya is the author of several books, recipe books, various other publications, journal papers, and she regularly lectures at national conferences, on postgraduate masters allergy courses, and on several university courses relating to food allergy. Tanya has severe allergies herself to milk and to egg, and she uses her professional and personal knowledge and insight to help others. That's quite a CV, so without further ado, I will hand over to Tanya.
Thank you very much, Lynn, and thank you to everyone who's joining us for this webinar as well. Hopefully today it will really help you, anybody that is on the beginning of their allergy journey, to kind of understand where you're going with your journey, and hopefully give you some insight into the journey forward and how you can be helped and what you can do to help yourself. So I've been looking forward to presenting for you, and hopefully you'll find it useful. Okay, I'll just make a start. Okay, so the food allergy journey. Of course, there's lots of other journeys in allergy which are not food related. This is just the food allergy journey. Okay, so who should be watching this webinar? Well, I think anybody who thinks they might have a food allergy, or anyone that reacts to a food, even if it's not allergy, they can still start their journey. So let's have a look where that takes us. Okay, so in this webinar, I'm going to cover history and keeping a food diary. Do you need an allergy clinic referral? What to expect if you are referred to the allergy clinic? And then what diagnosis and management is involved? And then do you need to review your allergy? Can you outgrow food allergy? Okay, so first of all then, the clinical history. So what is your story? So when you go to the GP or think about going to the GP, it's really important to have a really clear and concise history to discuss with the GP. And that way you'll get referred to the correct place that you need to go, or the GP can give you advice himself or herself. Okay, so first of all, keeping a clear diary and a clear history of what symptoms you had, whether they were within a few minutes, a few hours, or a few days. So whether they were immediate or delayed, whether the symptoms were in your skin, such as skin swellings, rashes, hives, whether they were gut symptoms, which might be hiccuping, reflux, tummy aches, vomiting, diarrhea, constipation, tummy pains, wind, any of these symptoms in the gut, or maybe food getting stuck in the esophagus. If you have photographs that you've taken of rashes, of course, show those to the doctor. So the doctor's trying to put a picture together to work out what's going on. Any suspected triggers of these symptoms, you can let the doctor know, and then tell him about the family history. So keeping things clear, keeping things concise, and getting over as much information as possible within your short consultation time is really key. I always think it's useful to also do up a typed A4 piece of paper with all the main points covered. Any treatments that you've trialed, any diets that you've trialed, antihistamines, inhalers, and other allergic history. And finally, details of the reactions you've had, such as cofactors. And that means, so if you, for example, found that during the pollen season that your symptoms seem to be worse, or when you've been running or exercising, if they seem to be worse, if you're drinking alcohol and they're worse, there are lots of other factors that you need to consider that you might not think are important, but actually the GP can make a decision about how important he thinks it is. So when you're making this clinical history, you might like to keep a food diary in this sort of way. So writing down the dates and times that you had a reaction and what the symptoms were, and also what you'd eaten, what you'd had to drink, what your medications were. And this gives a much clearer picture. Also having your photographs of any reactions as well. And if it is your child that has the reactions and mother's breastfeeding, keep a diary of mother's what she's having in her diet, because some of the allergens may pass across through the breast milk, and then that information can be used to help your child. Also keeping labelling information, ingredients of foods, of drinks, anything that you have, if you associate that with having an allergic reaction. Okay, so you've got your history, you've got your nice little A4 piece of paper, everything's clear, and you go and see your GP. So you discuss all this with the GP, and you take along your diary, tell him the family history, and tell him what current management that you're using, if any. And then the GP will decide whether he thinks that the symptoms that you're giving are likely to be an allergy that needs to be managed in secondary care at the allergy clinic, or whether the GP can help you or maybe refer to a dietitian at that point. There's lots of reactions to foods that aren't actually allergy. They're different types of hypersensitivity reactions. It doesn't mean they're not real. We can still help you, but you just need to be referred to the correct place. And the allergy clinic for those reactions is normally not the right place. Okay, so you get to the allergy clinic, you turn up with, again, your history and your diary, always really important. And they'll ask you all the same questions, but go into much more detail. They'll take an allergy-focused history, asking you lots of things. So if you can answer those really concisely, and again, thinking about symptoms that are immediate or delayed in the skin, the gut, the breathing, or the circulatory system. So if you felt faint when you eat a food or passed out or required to go to hospital, make sure you mention that. Then at the allergy clinic, they'll do some skin tests and maybe some blood tests as well. So to have the skin tests known as skin prick testing, you must be off antihistamine medication for at least a week. And lots of people actually can't do that, particularly during the pollen season. So you can either rearrange the appointment out of the pollen season or come off the antihistamines and then you can have the testing, but one or the other. Also, if someone has really, really bad eczema and you can't actually find a space on the arm to do the test, then actually you can't have those skin tests and you'll be given a blood test instead. So the blood test, there's two different types. One is looking for general foods, so like milk, egg, fish, soya, whatever it happens to be, which will they'll decide from the history you've given. And then there's another blood test called a component test, which is much more complicated, which looks at specific proteins within foods. And some people have those, but not everybody. So at the allergy clinic, you'll be given advice on avoiding the allergen. So avoiding a certain food. You'll probably see a dietitian who might advise to avoid on milk or egg or fish, nuts, whatever it happens to be. And then they will provide or advise on medicines and an allergy action plan. I'll go into that in a moment. You might see a nurse if you have asthma. You might be referred to the dermatologist if you have eczema. So all of these things will be taken into account, but the allergy clinic will do the testing and then interpret those tests for you. Okay, so what are the medications then that you might be prescribed? Well, it depends on the severity of your allergic reaction and the history that you've had before. So if you've had an anaphylactic reaction in the past or reacted to tiny traces of the food quite severely, you'll probably be given an adrenaline auto-injector. There are two on the market at the moment, the Jext and the EpiPen, both of which come in an adult and junior form. There used to be an Emerade pen, but at the moment these aren't on the market. So if you do have one of those, you do need to speak to your GP about changing that for either the Jext or the Emerade, or the, EpiPen. In addition, you might carry, you will carry antihistamines, which can be a liquid or tablet form. And if you've had respiratory reactions and problems breathing during a reaction or have asthma, you must always carry your reliever inhaler, which is normally the blue inhaler. And normally you'll have an action plan. So you should have a little bag that you carry around, preferably a see-through bag with your action plan and all these medicines in them. Always carry them, have them available in case they're needed. Okay, so if you've been diagnosed with a food allergy and you see a dietitian or somebody else that can give you information, what is it they're going to help you with? So avoiding trigger foods. So that's an obvious one. So if you're avoiding milk, if you're avoiding egg, if you're avoiding nuts, they'll give you advice and tell you where those ingredients might be hidden. So the next thing, of course, if you don't read ingredient labels, you won't know what's in a food. And quite often, a food that's in one supermarket that looks the same as in another supermarket, but it's from a different company or a supermarket own brand, might look the same, but the ingredients can be completely different. So you do need to read labels and read them every time. Also, if you look at the Eat Well guide here, this is the general Eat Well guide that the NHS have available to everybody on the NHS website. This just shows you the fractions of the diet and the different foods that make up a balanced diet. So if you're allergic to some of the foods and you take those away, in order to keep the diet balanced, it's really important that you replace the foods with something of similar nutritional value. And that's something that you can find out about yourself, but also if you're struggling, you can ask to speak to a dietitian who can help you balance your diet. Sometimes it's really simple. It's just changing a milk for a dairy-free milk, yogurt for dairy-free yogurt if you just have an isolated milk allergy. But the more dietary exclusions you have, the more difficult it is to balance the diet. And in addition, some people are fussy eaters, others are vegetarian, some people don't like certain foods. So, balancing the diet can be tricky for some of those people, especially if their cooking skills are not as good as they perhaps could be. They can start learning easy recipes and we can help with that. So eating a balanced and nutritious diet is really, really important. Any medical or dietitian appointment or nurse appointment, we will always be reminding you to have medicines readily available. So avoiding the allergens is really important. But if you make a mistake or someone else makes a mistake, you don't want to be left high and dry with no treatment. And it's important that you give yourself the correct treatment as soon as you can, as soon as you start reacting to a food. So any reactions that you do have, it's really important to diarise these, to put them in a diary, write down what it is you've eaten and what happened. It may be that you've had a food and by mistake it had the food in that you're allergic to or the ingredient in it. However, it could be that you're allergic to something else. And actually it's good to build up a picture so you can see what's happening. So when people have to avoid foods, particularly if it's something new to them or new for their child, people get very anxious and worried. And really, as dietitians and as the Anaphylaxis campaign, we want to turn the impossible into something that is possible. We want to focus on the positives and finding foods and recipes that you can enjoy. So in the context of food allergies, we want the diet to be as diverse as possible, balanced and compliant, in other words, keeping to the diet and avoiding the foods you're meant to be avoiding. We want the diet to taste good. We want someone with a food allergy to be able to join in, be able to go to a party, have a dinner party, all the everyday things that make life worth living. We want to have the diet to be nutritious and use and know how to use and find replacement foods and adapting recipes. So which foods are there that need to be clearly listed on labels? So there's 14 foods. So if the food that you're allergic to isn't one of these, then you have to be even more careful, and you're going to definitely need more help. So the 14 foods that have to be labelled are sesame seeds. Oh, actually, that's wheat, sorry. Wheat, milk, eggs, soya, lupin, peanuts, tree nuts, sesame seeds, mustard, fish, shellfish, which includes shellfish and mussels, mollusks, and celery, and sulfites. So these are the 14 foods that must be clearly labelled. The Anaphylaxis campaign do have some very good leaflets about foods that have to be labelled, but also what happens if you eat out, about eating out, and how the labelling actually has to be listed there. And there's a really fantastic webinar on the Anaphylaxis campaign website all about labelling, including foods pre-packed for direct sale. So do please have a look at that. I won't go into that right now. Okay, so when allergens are labelled, they have to be highlighted on a list. So for example, if you're allergic to wheat, because that's on the list of 14, that will be labelled in bold, as celery, the milk and cream. So again, have a look at that on the website. It's just an example here. Okay, so what about, let's use an example now. So if somebody has a milk allergy, let's have a look at how they might manage that milk allergy in the context of someone with anaphylaxis to milk or severe allergies to milk. So if there's milk and dairy given to that person, they can immediately see this and say, oh, I can't have cheese, I can't have milk, I can't have yogurt. It's very obvious, it's very easy. But what if it's not obvious? And so I put some examples here together to help you. So you might be having a cocktail on a Saturday night. You might be having a smoothie. But if you've got a milk allergy and you have this Don Simon pineapple and coconut drink, that's fine. But if you have the pineapple and coconut drink by Sun Exotic, it's not fine because that contains milk in the ingredients. If you don't check the ingredients, you will never know this, and you'll probably go ahead and have this, which could result in an allergic reaction. We don't want to treat allergic reactions, we want to prevent them. Again here, so the traditional custard powder, the Bird's custard powder, is milk-free, but the sachets contain milk. Always check. The Stork original baking block, when I made this presentation, and hopefully still, is milk-free, but the baking spread contains milk. It's so easy to get this mixed up. It's so important to read food labels so that you're really clear about what you can and can't eat. And of course, ingredients change. Since I wrote this presentation a couple of weeks ago, maybe this has now got milk in. You have to check. And I think I can't get that point over enough. What about if you have some friends round and you know one has a milk allergy and she really likes chicken and thyme hand-cooked crisps? You're not going to give her the roasted chicken and thyme sensations because they contain milk. But actually, you can serve the finest ones on the left to all of your guests to prevent cross-contamination as well. So I think this is all about managing allergy, about changing and adapting, and then you can just get on and enjoy life rather than worrying. So reading food labels is so important. Okay, so this person with a milk allergy then, so they shouldn't be having lactose-free cow's milk. I would say that's one mistake people make all the time when they have a milk allergy, because these products generally are kept with the plant-based milks right next to them, and people start thinking, oh, they're fine if I've got a milk allergy. These are for lactose intolerance. Lactose is the milk sugar, and when you react with an allergy, it's the protein that's the problem. The proteins in lactose-free milks are the same as cow's milk. And the same goats, sheep's and sheep's milk, goat's milk, and other animal milks, horse's milk, buffalo milk. The proteins are very, very similar to cow's milk. And therefore, we say if someone with a milk allergy should not be risking having those unless they specifically know they can tolerate them. Okay, still in the context of milk allergy then, we're just thinking about nutrition and about how do we replace nutrition and taste in the diet. There's loads of dairy-free products now, which are fantastic. But what about the nutrition? So if we look at the mild cheddar at the bottom, and then above that is the two other dairy-free cheeses. These happen to be coconut-based. So if we look at the calories, there is a difference in calories for the three cheeses, but the calcium is normally what people focus on. So you would think that the cheddar cheese would be the highest in calcium. So yes, 720 milligrams of calcium in 100 grams. That's really high calcium food. The middle one, Violife, has no calcium at all. So of course, if you're on a dairy-free diet, then you could be really low if you're relying on that as your source of calcium. But the top one is also dairy-free and that has more calcium in it than the normal cheddar cheese. So what I'm saying is actually what you think and what actually is are two separate things. However, it doesn't mean you should have the high calcium cheese, this one, if you don't like it on a dairy-free diet. It's better to have the one you like and you enjoy. You can make up the calcium in other ways or take a supplement. Let's explore that a little bit. So, do you need calcium supplements? Well, what about these foods? These are just some examples. So somebody, an adult, for example, would need between 700 and 800 milligrams of calcium a day. If you have a look at this, you can see just in 100 grams of Cheerios, 500 milligrams of calcium. The Ready Break, 30 grams, a tiny bowl, over 500. The almond milk, 189 milligrams in 100 mils. And the Hovis bread, there's plenty other items out there. I'm not choosing these specifically. These are just examples. So actually, it doesn't mean, you could have your low calcium cheese as long as you make your calcium up from other foods or calcium supplements. It's about enjoying the diet and about availability and affordability of the products that you can buy. On the bottom, I've just shown some examples of if you don't use any dairy-free products, but you can have dairy-free milk, but don't like drinking it, then make pasta with it. Make banana custard, make milk jelly and white sauce, and that way you can achieve your calcium intake easily. Okay, let's move on to egg allergy, shall we? So when somebody's allergic to egg, actually 80% of people who have severe reactions to egg, or not severe reactions, but just immediate allergy to egg, 80% will tolerate egg in well-cooked form. Now, you won't know whether that's you or not unless you've actually had it before and tolerated it, or whether the allergy clinic have advised you. This is exactly what they're well placed to do. They'll do allergy testing, whether it's skin testing, blood testing. They'll look at what you've been eating and whether you've been having any baked egg and how severe your reactions were in the past. And then they'll tell you whether you might be in this 80% that can tolerate well-cooked egg. They may ask you to try it at home or offer you a hospital challenge so that you can try the egg in hospital in a safe environment. Okay, so loosely cooked egg. People get things mixed up. So for example, the quiche, even though it's cooked for a long time, when it goes in the oven, it's a liquid. So by the time it actually becomes solid, the proteins don't change enough, and quite often the quiche will be considered to be loosely cooked, even though it wouldn't appear so. Yorkshire puddings, if they're the ones that are pre-cooked in the supermarket, then they'll be baked egg. But if they're made at home from a batter, and the same with pancakes, they're considered to be part cooked egg usually. So these are loosely cooked and more likely to cause an allergic reaction, as are boiled eggs and meringues as well. And then we've got our raw egg. So raw egg really is in things that you might not expect it to be in. So we all know what raw egg is on its own, but did you know it's sometimes in fresh ice cream, fresh chocolate mousses, mayonnaise, and especially fresh mayonnaise and tartar sauce, lemon curd, prawn crackers I haven't put on there, If anyone's ever made prawn crackers, you throw them into the oil, they're cooked in 2 or 3 seconds. The egg is considered to be not suitable for somebody who reacts to raw egg. And the same with royal icing sugar. They pasteurize the egg in all these products, so they're not dangerous, but the pasteurization process is not long enough to change the allergens. Okay, so I'm not really interested in that. I'm much more interested in how we can move forward with this. What can we do instead, rather than never having cake? Everyone likes cake. What can we do? How can we still eat a really good, balanced, normal, tasty diet? Well, there's lots of replacements for egg, for example. So flaxseed, ground flaxseed mixed with water. You mix it up, leave it 5 minutes, it turns into the texture of egg white. Chia seeds, soya protein, bananas, apple sauce, peanut butter. So depending on what you can tolerate, what you like, and what you need to replace in the recipe, so whether the egg is there as a binding agent, a raising agent, a glazing agent, will depend on which of these you use. So I hope you like my cooking. I've made a quiche here, and this quiche happens to be completely egg-free and in fact milk-free, as is the omelette. And you can make scrambled egg out of tofu as well. So it's about finding ways round and not making this a problem. Once you've done it, you know, that's not a perfect quiche, but actually I really enjoyed it. It's not about it being fantastic. It's about it tasting good and being part of your family meals. And then we've got the revolutionary aquafaba, which is water of the bean, that stands for. And you can see here, we've got some tin of chickpeas. What happens is when the chickpeas are in a tin, they leach protein into the water. This water becomes protein rich. And funny enough, how someone ever found this out, I don't know. When you whisk the water, it turns into what resembles egg white, and you can make meringues and chocolate mousses out of it. So again, you can make these things, and if you've ever tried them, they taste barely different from the real thing. And there's a nice Vegan Society aquafaba blog here that you might want to look at. Of course, with the whole vegan movement now and plant-based eating, this is of course quite common, and plenty of recipes around. Okay, and I just put this one in because if somebody is avoiding wheat, gluten, milk, egg, nuts, and soya, they come to me as a dietitian and they say, I can't eat anything, life's so difficult, the free-from foods are really expensive, what can I do? Actually, here is just a selection of foods. Every single one is free from wheat, gluten, milk, egg, nuts, and soya. And if you look around the supermarket, you will find so many products actually that are suitable. And, you know, look for those products. So be positive, look for the things that you want to find, and you will find them. Okay, so, I must say that, by the way, this was at the time that I made the presentation, so it may be that ingredients have changed, so don't forget to check the label. What about free-from foods? Well, they have a really good place in food allergy, and people feel confident having free-from foods. But I've had quite a few patients in the past who have bought them and had an allergic reaction. The reason being that they were so excited about the fact they're free from, they forgot to check the label. And of course, the free from cakes might be free from gluten and wheat, they might be free from milk, but lots of them are not free from egg. So if you have an egg allergy, you will have a reaction to them. Again, some of the other products might contain other allergens. So in a lot of gluten-free products, they might have pea protein, they might have chickpea flour or almonds, all sorts of ingredients. So just because they're free from, they're not free from all allergens, and therefore check the label. Okay. I just wanted to show you this because I've had probably 10 or 11 patients within the last 2 or 3 years that have come to my clinic. And when we go through, what's your child eating, or what are you eating? And I can think most of them have got just maybe a milk and an egg allergy. So what I'm finding is that some of these patients are having and buying free from products because they say the words milk free and egg free on them. What they don't realise is that they could just be buying standard products that don't contain milk or egg. So this is one example here. So this bread, specific bread, £6.40 for one loaf. Now, if you don't have to avoid wheat and gluten, you probably don't want to, and therefore you wouldn't choose a tapioca bread that's £6.40. You'd probably go for something like a Hovis bread, 2 for £2, and you'd probably prefer it. You may not, you probably prefer it. So what I'm trying to say is, you don't have to just buy free from foods. Some people think that's the case. You can branch out and look in the supermarket for other options. Okay, so can you outgrow your food allergies? Yes, you can. You definitely can. You may fully outgrow it or partially outgrow it. This definitely needs assessment, especially if you've had a severe allergic reaction in the past. And there's a special way of introducing a food back into the diet because certain factors affect the tolerance of that food. So a bit like the baked egg in the products I showed you, sometimes if foods are cooked or processed, they're more likely to be tolerated. So when we first introduce them back into the diet, following negative testing and advice from the consultant, then we would suggest that the person has the food in that cooked, baked form first. So there's a special ladder, special approach to how we do this. Sometimes people actually by mistake are already having something in their diet that contains the food they're allergic to, and that's how we work out what the problem is. And one common one is sausages containing pea protein. But just because that person tolerates the sausage containing pea protein, it doesn't necessarily mean they'll tolerate peas. So again, it does need testing. You do need to discuss it with the allergy clinic, especially if your reactions in the past have been more severe. Okay, so what about if you're having a reaction to a food that's a delayed reaction? I wanted to include this because we've just talked about what happens at the allergy clinic. What about if you never get to the allergy clinic and you have reactions to a food? So a delayed symptom might be an hour later, you get itchy eczema, or the next day you get diarrhea, or reflux or constipation, blood in the stools, or celiac disease. With having gluten, you get gastrointestinal symptoms, or eczema, or irritable bowel syndrome type symptoms. What about these people? Because these aren't necessarily going to end up in an allergy clinic, would be unlikely to do so. So what are we going to do? Are we going to turn them away, or is there something we can do? So first of all, I would say that some people get upset and think, oh, what am I going to do? And they get so worried that they go for other allergy tests, and they look on the internet, things like hair analysis or IgG testing, kinesiology, or even trying the food at home on their own. So some people will dose up with medication so they can eat a food. And I would say that actually try not to do any of these things, because firstly, it's bad for your health. Secondly, it's bad for your person. Thirdly, there's no scientific evidence that any of these approaches are helpful. So you'll be much better off moving forward in a different way. So what you can do is your food and symptom diary, the same as we've already talked about, but you're going to be recording for delayed reactions. So you do need somebody to look at that diary. You can cast an eye on it and say, oh, okay, so I think that maybe cutting out this, this, and this might be helpful. So you can exclude those foods then based on that advice for a couple of weeks, and then put them back in the diet one by one to confirm tolerance. What you don't want to do is cut out a whole load of foods, 20 foods, and then never put them back in just because you're well, and then the diet is unbalanced. So it's about keeping the diet balanced and nutritious, but finding out what actually you can may be the trigger of your symptoms. Keeping in mind that the quantity of a food, for these reactions, the quantity of a food or the frequency of that the food is eaten, or the cooking time and temperature, are all things that can affect tolerance. So for example, if somebody has a lactose intolerance, they might find that they can get away with a bit of normal cheddar cheese and a bit of milk, but if they have it every day in large amounts, they have symptoms. So it's a bit like a balance and you get tipped over the edge. So it's about For these types of reactions, it's about eating food to the level that they're tolerated, but keeping the diet balanced and using alternatives and modifying recipes. So some of the things you do are similar to immediate allergy, and other things are a bit different. And a dietitian can definitely help with these things. So it's definitely worth asking the GP to refer you to a dietitian. Okay, so look, thank you very much for listening. I'm looking forward to getting your questions and answering those for you. Thank you.
Can I say a huge thank you to you, Tanya, for that absolutely fantastic presentation. Not only was it very clear and full of great advice, but it was also extremely positive in tone. And I think that will be of enormous help to people who are going to be listening to this webinar. So thank you very, very much for that. I'm sure there are lots of questions out there that people would like to ask you. And so I would say to everyone, if you do have any questions for Tanya, and this webinar will be listened to by lots of people at different times, do forward all your questions to us at the Anaphylaxis campaign. We will send them off to Tanya, and she will give us her fantastic answers, because she always gives us great answers when we ask her things via the clinical panel and via our other information. So we will compile those questions together and produce a question and answer sheet, which we will make available to everyone. So thank you very, very much, Tanya. People will be listening to this during our Allergy Awareness Week. So again, a huge thank you to everyone who's listening, and I hope that you will continue to support us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe?